I raised my daughter alone, loved her so hard I forgot to love myself. So when she left me at a rehab center and used photos of my surgery to promote her wellness brand, I couldn't breathe. But what she didn't know, I'd spent years investing in something she'd never touched. My own worth. I knew something was wrong the morning I overheard my own daughter call me dead weight. I'd just finished rinsing out her juicer. Those little metal mesh strainers never did cooperate, and I was stacking dishes in the rack when her voice floated down the hallway. She was on the phone, probably with one of her glossy friends from yoga or wherever she collected those thin women in matching linen sets. "If we don't act now, she'll stay forever," Brooke whispered. I froze, hands still inside a coffee mug, the sponge pressing against my knuckles. She meant me. Just 2 months earlier, I'd moved in with her and Eli after my knee replacement. The doctor said I'd need 6 to 8 weeks before I could climb stairs or drive. Brooke had sounded almost cheerful when she offered her guest suite. "You'll love it, Mom." Clean energy, green smoothies, and a Himalayan salt lamp in every room. At first, it was all smiles and scheduled turmeric shots. She'd wake me with warm lemon water and end each day with a diffused blend of eucalyptus and peppermint oil. Eli was polite, if not distant, always vanishing into his startup cave in the garage. But little things started changing. First, my recliner disappeared. "It didn't match the aesthetic," she said. Then, my books got boxed up. "Too much clutter, Mom." And now, this. Dead weight. I didn't make a sound. Just rinsed the cup and stared out the window at her backyard garden. Stone path, lavender bushes, a quartz fountain burbling gently. A picture-perfect life I didn't belong in anymore. That Friday, they dropped me off at Pinebrook Transitional Living. I was told it was temporary. Just until things settled. Eli drove. Brooke rode up front, and I sat in the back next to my overnight bag, clutching the handle like it might anchor me. They didn't even walk me in. The rehab center smelled like antiseptic and oatmeal. The nurse assigned to my room, a kind woman named Rita, helped me unpack. She must have noticed my silence because she patted my hand and said, "You're not the first mother they've dropped off like this." I didn't ask what she meant. A week passed, then another. No visits, no calls. On my birthday, I received a generic email, "Happy solar return. Don't forget to manifest your best self today." It was signed Team Brooke Wellness, followed by a link to her new podcast episode, Cutting Toxic Parents, and Why It's Okay to Let Go. My anger simmered. The next week, during a group session, I saw a flyer on the bulletin board, Brooke's smiling face, next to a photo of my own, me in the hospital gown, face puffy from anesthesia. Brooke Wellness, the healing journey, before and after. She'd used my recovery as a marketing campaign. I asked Rita where the flyer came from. "They're everywhere," she said. "She's opening a wellness clinic downtown, real upscale. Got influencers and everything." My stomach turned. That photo was taken the morning after surgery. I'd been on morphine. I hadn't consented to anything. But that wasn't the worst of it. One night, Rita pulled me aside after dinner. "She told the director you were, quote, medically unstable," she said. "Wanted to expedite the long-term residency paperwork. Said it was better for everyone." I blinked. What? "She also withdrew funds from your emergency account," Rita added gently. $2,000. She said it was to cover part of your care here." That was a lie. I recognized the number, exact amount she'd mentioned in a Facebook post, raising money for her clinic's initial seed costs. I sat on my narrow twin bed, numb. Brooke hadn't just abandoned me. She'd repackaged my suffering and skimmed off the top. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I borrowed an old laptop from the front desk and logged into my email for the first time in months. And that's when I saw it. A notice from an old grant program I'd forgotten all about. Back when I taught AP Environmental Science, I'd participated in a green energy initiative. We were offered partial shares in a startup if we integrated their curriculum. Most of us thought it was a token gesture, a way to boost morale. But something told me to check. I logged into the portal, heart pounding. And there it was. A balance. A very large balance. The company had taken off. Skyrocketed, in fact. My shares, untouched for almost a decade, were now worth $1.3 million. I stared at the screen, trembling. Brooke thought she'd buried me, left me in a sterile room to rot while she rebranded my body into a cautionary tale. But what she didn't know, could never know, was that I now held more power than she could dream of. That was the night I stopped being her liability. That was the night I became her undoing. And the best part? She'd never see me coming. What kind of woman rebuilds her life from a rehab bed and buys her betrayer's dream out from under her? Well, darling, you're about to find out. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not even Rita. That kind of money? It changes how people look at you. Suddenly, you're not just someone recovering from surgery. You're a walking vault. I'd spent too many years being seen as a problem to fix. I wasn't about to become a purse to unzip. Instead, I got quiet. I called Janelle Cruz the next morning. My old college roommate. Financial planner. Voice like velvet wrapped around steel. "Denise Whitaker," she said, after one ring. "You're alive. That must mean trouble." "I found something," I said. "Something big." 30 minutes later, she had the login. Another hour, she called me back. "Girl, sit down," she said, breathless. "You have options. We're talking LLC, reinvestments, soft landings. Do you want to build or burn?" My throat caught. "Both." Janelle let out a laugh that reminded me why we'd stayed friends all these years. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved in silence. I filed for an LLC under a placeholder name, D. Whitaker Ventures, opened a new bank account, quietly transferred funds. Janelle handled the paperwork. I studied Brooke's every move. Her Instagram was a goldmine. She posted daily updates about the dream flagship location, some corner suite in a trendy downtown complex. Lots of exposed brick and potted snake plants. Every caption was breathless. "Manifestation meets manifestation. Our new home awaits." One post showed her posing in front of the lease sign, all smiles. "Final stages of negotiation," she wrote. "Cross your chakras." So I did. Crossed my chakras. And called the leasing office. I posed as a wellness brand consultant from Santa Fe, said I was interested in the exact same space, asked if it was still available. "Well," the agent said, "we do have a front runner, but if you can beat the offer." And that's all I needed to hear. I bid $6,000 over her offer, paid cash for the first 6 months. My new LLC signed the lease that Friday. Brooke never saw it coming. A week later, she posted a tearful video. "We were so close to launching our healing sanctuary," she sobbed, "but due to unforeseen circumstances, the deal fell through. Please keep us in your energy." I watched it while eating dry toast in the Pinebrook rec room. Her eyeliner streaked down her cheeks like black teardrops. In the comments, someone asked what went wrong. Brooke replied with a single word: sabotage. "Oh, honey, you have no idea." That's when I knew it was time to leave. I didn't pack much, just what I came with. A canvas bag, a few cardigans, a pocket calendar with floral print. I signed the discharge papers and hugged Rita goodbye. "You going back to your daughters?" she asked gently. "No," I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. "I'm starting something of my own." Outside, the air smelled like pine and potential. I took a cab downtown. The cafe across the street from the wellness building was quiet that morning. A little shop called Roast and Bloom, with warm lighting and vintage mugs hanging behind the counter. And that's where I met Nico, barista, maybe mid-20s, tattoos peeking out from his sleeves, and a calm, unhurried way of moving, like he'd long ago made peace with chaos. "You new to this side of town?" he asked, setting down my latte. "Something like that," I said. "I just bought the building across the street." His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. "You don't look like a landlord," I smiled. "Good." We talked for nearly an hour. About Brooke's generation of wellness for clicks, about real nourishment versus trendy cleanses. I asked him how long he'd been working in coffee. "Too long," he said. "I wanted to open a tea house once, a place where older women could come and not feel invisible. But," he didn't finish the sentence, but I did. "But you didn't have the right partner." He looked up, surprised. That was the first spark. By the end of the week, we'd signed a partnership agreement. Second Wind Cafe and Wellness would be our baby. Not a spa, not a detox retreat. A space for women over 50 to heal, connect, and raise hell if needed. Nutritional therapy with science behind it. Workshops for reinvention. Herbal blends named after iconic trailblazers. I poured money into it with no hesitation. Not just for revenge. For the version of me who believed Being low maintenance meant being lovable. For the Denise who folded her knees under Brooke's farmhouse table, apologizing for taking up space. And for every woman dumped at the edge of someone else's dream. We launched fast. Word of mouth. A few quiet teasers. No splash. No spectacle. Just a soft opening scheduled 3 weeks after we signed the lease. But of course, Brooke found out. I saw it in her latest video. Her usual energy had turned frantic. "A new cafe is opening in our intended space," she hissed. "And they stole our concept. There's no integrity in wellness anymore." I couldn't help but laugh. She didn't know. Not yet. Not until that ribbon-cutting ceremony. And trust me, she was going to get front row seats. How do you serve revenge that's both warm and healing? Stay tuned. Opening day came with the kind of Colorado morning I love. Crisp air, wide blue sky, and just enough breeze to keep the sun from feeling smug. I wore a soft cream sweater and my late husband's watch. Not for sentiment, for grounding. I stood out front as Nico straightened the last welcome sign. The paint was barely dry, but our window decals shimmered in the sunlight. Second Wind Cafe and Wellness for women ready to begin again. Inside, everything smelled like cardamom and courage. We'd transformed that old shell of a space into something that breathed. High ceilings, reclaimed wood shelves, ceramic pots brimming with dried herbs, cozy corners with armchairs made for long talks and lemon balm tea. No mirrors, no scales, no juice cleanses, just nourishment. And women came. Older women, divorced women, grieving women, women whose children had forgotten their birthdays, whose bodies were changing faster than their calendars. They came with stories and stiff joints, and a hunger for something real. I greeted every single one of them like an old friend. At 11:15, Nico nudged me. "There's someone filming across the street." I didn't need to look. I already knew. Brooke stood near the sidewalk, phone in hand, muttering furiously into her front-facing camera. Her hair was curled into those trademark glossy waves, lipstick too bright for daytime. Behind her, Eli looked around like he might melt into the sidewalk if someone gave him the chance. "Can you believe this?" she snapped into the phone. "It's like a knockoff version of my vision board. They even used sage in the logo." Sage. The herb I used to grow outside our kitchen window when she was little. She'd crush it between her fingers and wrinkle her nose. I turned back to Nico. "Let her film. The more she rants, the more curious they'll get." He grinned. By noon, we had a full house. Janelle stopped by with her partner, both of them glowing from a morning hike. She brought flowers, lavender and eucalyptus. "For old cycles," she said, handing them to me, "and new beginnings." We placed them on the counter next to our cash register, right under a small frame that read, "Age isn't a weakness. It's a resource." At 2 p.m. sharp, we held our ribbon cutting. Nico passed out sparkling hibiscus tea. A local councilwoman made a small speech. We had just cut the ribbon when the front door creaked open, and Brooke walked in. Now, I hadn't told a soul she was my daughter. Not even Nico. I didn't want the story to be about betrayal. I wanted it to be about what happens after. But when Brooke stepped inside, heels clicking, jaw clenched, the room went still. Her eyes darted around, took in the walls, the calm, rich lighting, the nods to science and soul. And then they landed on me. I smiled. "Welcome to Second Wind," I said softly. Her face drained of color. "Mom," she choked out, "what are you doing here?" I tilted my head. "I own the place." The silence was thick enough to spoon. For a second, she looked like she might cry. Then she laughed, brittle and bright. You bought this? You don't know the first thing about running a wellness business." I didn't flinch. "Neither did you. But I guess you had time to learn between monetizing my recovery photos and siphoning my savings." A few gasps rippled through the front tables. Janelle quietly ushered people toward the back patio, giving us space. Brooke glanced around, realized this wasn't her crowd. These women weren't here for trends or curated trauma. They were here because they'd survived things. Buried parents, buried dreams. And now they were finally ready to breathe. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to offer you something." Her brow furrowed. "What? A job?" She blinked. You want me to work for you? I smiled, slow and even. You've always talked about wellness. This is your chance to prove it means something. I need someone to help with outreach. We've got a volunteer program starting for isolated elders, weekly breathwork for caregivers, a loyalty program to keep prices affordable. It's meaningful work. She looked stunned. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You'd hire me? After everything? Not hire. Offer, I said gently. The hourly rate is posted in the back. You'll start with the community desk, answer phones, help organize. Nico will train you. Nico raised a brow behind the counter. I gave him a nod. Brooke's jaw tightened. You think I'll actually take this? I didn't answer. Just turned toward the kitchen and said over my shoulder, It's up to you. The door jingled behind me. Whether she left or stayed, I didn't turn to look. That night after we closed, Nico wiped the counter and said, You didn't even gloat. That was kind of baller. I chuckled, tired but calm. I don't need to gloat. She knows. And the truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. But would Brooke really swallow her pride and take the job? Or had I just handed her one last rope to hang herself with? 3 days passed. I didn't hear from her. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive post about toxic energy saboteurs or the shadows that cling hardest before your rise. Radio silence. I'd be lying if I said it didn't rattle me. Just a little. Not because I needed to see her squirm. The Lord knows, a little humility might have done her good, but because I didn't know what she'd do with the silence. Brooke never did take well to losing control. Then, on Thursday morning, I walked into the cafe at 8:05 a.m. and there she was, standing behind the community desk, stiff as a fence post in her designer activewear, typing with one hand and holding a tiny cup of herbal tea in the other. She didn't look at me, but her name was there. On the shift schedule, Nico had posted on the wall, Brooke, Outreach Assistant, 8 o'clock to 1 p.m. My fingers twitched around the edge of my coat. You came, I said evenly. I'm here, aren't I? She muttered, not taking her eyes off the screen. Nico caught my eye from across the bar and raised an eyebrow like, Are we doing this? I gave him the tiniest nod. Morning, he said as he slid a cup of matcha across to her. We usually do coffee with the regulars around 9. Then inventory check and flyer runs after 10. Brooke looked at the matcha like it was a science experiment she didn't study for. I don't drink caffeine, she said flatly. Nico smiled, unbothered. Cool, more for us. I headed to the back to restock herbs and left them alone. If she was going to work here, she'd have to learn how to breathe in a room where not everyone bowed to her keywords and curated lighting. By noon, she still hadn't spoken to me beyond clipped one-word answers. But she hadn't left, either. Progress. And then it happened. Around 12:45, a woman in her early 70s walked in with a walker. Her name was Harriet. I remembered her from last week. Newly widowed, always wore hats with little feathers tucked into the brim. She shuffled up to the desk and gave Brooke a warm smile. Excuse me, dear. I came to sign up for the grief journaling group. My daughter said I needed to get out of the house. Brooke blinked. Her hands froze above the keyboard. The what? Harriet leaned forward slightly. Grief group, Thursday afternoons. It said to sign up at the desk. Brooke glanced back at Nico like she was hoping for a lifeline. He stayed silent, head down in the sink. I stepped up beside her, slow and easy. Brooke can help you. She's the one managing sign-ups this week. For a second, Brooke looked like she might bolt. But then, maybe out of pride, maybe because Harriet was watching, she gave a tight smile and said, Right, yes, 1 second. She pulled up the file, fumbled for the printout sheet, grabbed the wrong one. I didn't step in. Harriet waited patiently. When Brooke finally handed her the clipboard and said, Here you go, take your time, there was something in her voice. Not kindness, not yet, but the tiniest crack in that frozen wall she'd built around herself. After Harriet shuffled off to the reading nook, Brooke let out a long breath. Was that so hard? I asked gently. She didn't answer. But she didn't snap, either. The shift ended at 1 o'clock. Brooke disappeared into the back, grabbed her bag, and came back out looking like she might say something. But then she just walked past me, paused at the door, and muttered, See you Monday. I didn't call after her. I just nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. The next few weeks rolled by, slow and steady. Brooke kept showing up. No fanfare, no faux spiritual monologues. She still carried that edge, that curated defensiveness, like a purse she didn't know how to put down. But she did the work. She organized flyers. She refilled the tea station. She helped Harriet find a ride after her journaling group. And once, just once, I caught her laughing with Nico over something dumb he said about herbal laxatives. She didn't see me watching. That night, I stood in the quiet cafe after we closed, wiping down the tables. I thought about the last time I'd seen her laugh like that. Really laugh. Not for likes, not for applause. Just freely. It had been years, maybe since her father passed. Grief does strange things to a child. And to a mother. I think both of us had locked something away back then and thrown away the key. Maybe Second Wind wasn't just healing the women who walked in the front door. Maybe it was healing the woman behind the desk too. Still, I wasn't foolish. Something told me Brooke hadn't come crawling back just because she had nowhere else to go. She wanted something, needed something, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. Because when the daughter who left you for dead suddenly shows up at your door every morning, what's she really looking for? It started with a flash drive. One of those little rose gold ones you clip to your keys if you're trying to look tech savvy. Brooke dropped it on the break room table by accident, just before closing. I heard the soft clatter when it hit the floor. She was flustered, rummaging through her bag, muttering about missing receipts. "You dropped something," I said, picking it up. "Oh," she blinked, a little too fast. "Yeah, that's just tax stuff." I handed it back without comment. But the moment she left for the day, a knot settled in my gut. Tax stuff? I knew that flash drive. It was the same one she used when she was building her clinic pitch deck earlier that year. I remembered it because she'd waved it around like a golden ticket, bragging about investors and seed vibes. She'd plugged it into my old laptop once and insisted I preview her logo. Back then, I smiled. Now I wondered. The next morning, she called in, sick. Nico said she sounded hoarse and a little too rehearsed. That was when my curiosity got the better of me. I wasn't proud of it, but I looked. The flash drive was still in her drawer. She'd forgotten it again. Maybe on purpose, maybe not. I plugged it into the register laptop after hours. Just me, the tea-steeped silence, and the hum of the refrigerator in back. There were 6 folders. 5 of them were exactly what she said. Tax documents, design drafts, wellness PDFs. The 6th one was labeled B-Plan. I clicked. Inside, I found a spreadsheet titled Second Wind, Ownership Revision, Draft. My stomach tightened. The document outlined projected earnings, investor outreach lists, and, at the bottom, a section titled Potential Buyout Strategy. She'd listed herself as Director of Holistic Brand Identity. Me? Nowhere. In her notes, she wrote, once initial branding gains traction, propose equity buyout to existing founder. Leverage narrative of generational healing and media visibility. Suggest mother-daughter success arc. I leaned back, heart thudding. There it was. Her angle. She didn't want redemption. She wanted a rebrand. She'd seen the buzz Second Wind was stirring, the features in the local magazine, the growing crowd of older women sharing our blends on Facebook. And now she wanted to fold herself back into the story like nothing happened. Worse, she wanted to push me out and take the credit. My hands trembled. Not with sadness. Not even with rage. With resolve. I closed the file, ejected the drive, placed it right back in her drawer, neat as ever. Let her believe I didn't know. Sometimes the best defense is letting the other side think they've still got the upper hand. That weekend, I called Janelle. We met at the same cafe where we first toasted to my newfound fortune, this time tucked into a corner booth, 2 women dressed in fleece vests and knowing smiles. She's laying the groundwork for a hostile takeover, I said, sliding a copy of the spreadsheet across the table. Janelle whistled low. Ballsy, but sloppy. Can we protect the business? I asked. Lock the structure? She nodded. I'll file the amendment this week. We'll shift you from sole owner to sole trustee under a protective living trust. She can't touch it. Not even if she tries to buy in through the front door. And what about publicity? I asked slowly. Could she spin it? Janelle narrowed her eyes. Only if you let her. And I suggest you don't. I nodded, stirring honey into my tea. I wasn't going to fight Brooke on her turf. Social media, smoke, and mirrors. I was going to bring her back to mine. Real space, real people, real impact. The next day, I put up a new notice on the cafe bulletin board. Coming soon. Second Wind Mentorship Circles, Women 60, plus supporting new entrepreneurs. Apply within. Nico raised an eyebrow. Expanding already? I want a few of our regulars to get involved, I said. Real faces, real voices. And it worked. That same week, a woman named Dottie, retired school nurse, sassier than any 20-something I've ever met, signed on as our first circle lead. She started planning a community garden behind the cafe before I could even approve the budget. More women followed. Word spread. Our mission deepened. Second Wind wasn't just a space anymore. It was a movement. Brooke returned to work that Monday in full makeup and a beige wrap dress. When she saw the new flyers and the crowd of older women trading seed packets at table 3, something flickered in her face. It wasn't pride. It was panic. She pulled me aside after her shift, voice low and urgent. I had an idea, she said. What if we started doing Story Sundays? You and me, sharing our journey. Like a video series? I met her eyes, steady, calm. Our journey? I echoed. Yeah, she smiled brightly, too brightly. A mother-daughter thing. Redemption arc. Generational wisdom. It's what people want. I let her words hang in the air for a beat too long. Then I smiled gently. Let me think about it. Because I'd already decided. This wasn't going to be our story, it was going to be mine. She thought she could rewrite the ending. But what happens when the story's already been claimed? The nerve of that girl. She stood in my cafe, in front of the very women she'd once called cluttered energy, and tried to turn our shared pain into content. Like grief was an aesthetic. Like betrayal could be background music for her next viral reel. My fingers itched the entire time she talked about Story Sundays. Part of me wanted to shout. The other part, that old teacher part, she wanted to give Brooke a pop quiz. Define integrity, sweetie. Use it in a sentence that doesn't include hashtags. But I didn't lose my cool. I nodded, smiled, and told her I'd think about it. Because what I really wanted to know was what she'd try next. And oh, did she try? 3 days later, I got a cease and desist letter. It arrived in a taupe envelope, all soft branding and elegant lettering. Like a wedding invitation, except instead of joy, it came with legal language and thinly veiled threats. The sender? Brooke Whitaker Lawson, founder and visionary, Saged Wellness Inc. She had filed a provisional trademark for the name Second Wind, claimed prior conceptual use, included Instagram posts, voice memos, and even text messages to me as proof of collaborative ideation. I laughed so hard, I nearly spilled my tea. Collaborative ideation? I'm the one who paid for this place in full. I'm the one who sketched out that logo on the back of a diner napkin. She hadn't collaborated. She'd squatted on my goodwill, then tried to flip it for profit like she was hawking essential oils out of the back of a Pilates class. Nico found me rereading the letter in the back room. You good? He asked. I handed it to him. He read the first line, raised his eyebrows, and let out a slow whistle. Wow, that's bold. She's not coming for me, I said quietly. She's coming for the brand. He looked confused. Isn't that the same thing? I shook my head. No, not anymore. Because Second Wind wasn't just mine now. It belonged to every woman who'd walked through that door, set down her pain, and dared to pick up joy again. It belonged to Dottie, to Harriet, to the volunteer who showed up with her grief journal and left with a job offer. It was bigger than me, which meant Brooke had made a big mistake. She didn't just try to trademark a name, she tried to trademark a community. Janelle was on it in less than a day. I'll file a counterclaim before lunch, she said, voice brisk. Her documentation's weak. If this ends up in arbitration, she won't have a leg to stand on. Can we keep it quiet? I asked. No press, no drama. She paused. Are you sure? This could get sympathy. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted something clean, something permanent. By the end of the week, we'd filed our own mark, anchored by invoices, property records, and digital timestamps. Every logo, every product label, every workshop, my name was on all of it. Her proof was a Pinterest board and a dream. Still, I braced for impact. And it came. In the form of an email. Subject line, "You left me no choice." Brooke's message was half apology, half sermon. She called it a clarity moment, said she had acted from a place of creative desperation, and that, "We both know this was my vision first." She ended it with, "If you don't want to co-create, I'll have to go public with my truth." My truth. What a slippery phrase. I didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, I printed the email and brought it to Nico. "Read this," I said, sliding it across the counter. "Tell me what you see." He read it twice, then looked up. "She's warning you." "No," I said. "She's bluffing. But we're not playing anymore." That afternoon, I called a meeting. Not with lawyers, with the women, the regulars, the volunteers, our circle leads, anyone who'd built this place from the inside out. I told them the whole story. No spin, no villain monologue, just the truth. How my own daughter tried to box me up like a brand. How she walked away when I was at my weakest, and came back only when I became valuable again. There was a long pause when I finished. Then Dottie, bless her, stood up and said, "She thinks she can hijack our second wind? Oh no, honey, this ain't a rental car." And the room erupted. That weekend, they rallied. They wrote testimonials, shared their own stories online, used the hashtag #MySecondWind, and flooded our social media with images of grief, growth, and glorious reinvention. No shade, no dragging, just strength. Brooke never responded again, but someone forwarded me a screenshot of her latest post, a soft-lit selfie, captioned, "Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who fear your evolution the most. Protect your vision." Same script, new packaging. She'd moved on to something called Luna Breath, said it was her real calling. Didn't mention second wind once. I'd expected to feel smug. Instead, I just felt light. Like a draft finally cleared the room. She wasn't going to stop spinning. But I wasn't spinning with her anymore. And if she couldn't spin my story, what power did she really have left? I got the invitation 2 weeks later. It came tucked inside a white envelope with watercolor print, tiny green leaves, a speck of gold foil. No return address, but I didn't need one. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Neat, controlled, practiced, just like Brooke. Inside, we're hosting a small dinner for close friends and family. Sunday, 6 p.m., our place. Would love to have you there. No pressure. Brooke and Eli. I held the card like it was ticking. Was this supposed to be an olive branch? A trap? A PR stunt with roasted vegetables and wine pairings? Still, part of me, some old ache I thought I'd buried, wanted to go. Not for her, but to sit at that table one last time and know it wouldn't haunt me anymore. I told Nico. "You sure?" he asked, gently. "Feels like a setup." I shrugged. "I'm not going to argue. I'm going to observe." He grinned. "Take notes." The house hadn't changed. Not much. Same white walls, same too perfect fiddle leaf fig by the fireplace. She'd replaced the couch, though. Probably after I left my recovery blanket on it one too many times. And Eli? He greeted me with that same lopsided smirk like he thought this was all beneath him, but he was willing to play nice. "Glad you could make it," he said, guiding me in. I replied, hanging my coat on the hook I used to keep my keys on. Brooke appeared from the kitchen. She wore soft blue linen, her hair twisted into a loose braid like some kind of boho diplomat. She hugged me lightly, too lightly. Her fingers barely touched my back. "You look good," she said. "Peaceful." "Retirement suits me," I said. "So does revenge." Her smile faltered for just a second. The dining table was set for 6. Brooke had invited 2 others, a wellness podcaster named Amber and her healing architect husband. They talked in smooth, syrupy voices about lunar cycles and the importance of vertical window spacing for optimal breathwork. I smiled politely, said little, watched a lot. Brooke served lentil stew and gluten-free cornbread, no butter, no salt. Everything looked healthy, but tasted like warm cardboard. Eli kept topping up wine glasses, hoping no one would notice the food lacked heart. When the plates were cleared, Brooke tapped her glass. "Before dessert, I wanted to share something," she said, voice sweet and trembling with performance. "I've been reflecting a lot on healing, on lineage, on what it means to reclaim the mother wound." Amber nodded solemnly like Brooke had just named a national holiday. I realized, Brooke continued, that everything I've built, everything I want to build, it started with my mother, her resilience, her science, her energy. She looked straight at me. I wouldn't be where I am without you, Mom. The room quieted. Eyes turned to me. Now, here's the part where a lesser woman might have cried. But I wasn't here for theatrics. I picked up my glass, took a sip, and set it down slowly. I'm glad you're reflecting, I said, because what you did, it wasn't a wound. It was a weapon. Eli shifted in his seat. Second wind wasn't yours to reclaim, I went on. You didn't lift me up. You left me behind. You didn't co-create. You erased. Brooke's face flushed. I was lost, Mom. You were calculated, I interrupted. But you weren't the only one who found their voice. I found mine too. And let me be very clear, my legacy doesn't need your hashtags. The room was silent except for the soft clink of Amber stirring her tea. I stood up. I appreciate the invitation, I said, but this is the last time I sit at a table where love comes with conditions. I didn't slam my glass. I didn't raise my voice. I just walked out, quiet, composed, complete. And as I shut the door behind me, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. My car sat parked under the same street lamp where I once waited in the passenger seat for Brooke to come out after one of her networking brunches, back when I still believed she needed me more than she resented me. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, staring at that front porch. How many meals had I cooked there? How many groceries had I hauled up those steps? How many affirmations had I swallowed just to keep the peace? It wasn't my home anymore. It wasn't my daughter's either. Because a home isn't where you're tolerated. It's where you're safe. Back at Second Wind, Nico was still closing up. How was it? He asked. I handed him the invitation. She tried to rebrand remorse. He whistled. You good? I looked around at our cafe. The dim lights, the hanging herbs, the stack of folded aprons by the sink. Better than good, I said. He grinned. So we still launching that night circle next week? Absolutely. And I meant it. Because I wasn't building anything for her anymore. I was building for us. The ones who got left behind, counted out, and still dared to begin again. She served cardboard and called it communion. But me? I've got something cooking that feeds the soul. A week passed. The sky turned colder. The leaves, crisp and gold, began to gather along the cafe windows like secrets waiting to be swept. I was restocking our herbal sleep blends, lavender, valerian, skullcap, when the bell over the door jingled. Brooke, not dressed for war this time. No contour, no stage-ready smile. She wore jeans, a hoodie, and the look of a woman who hadn't slept in days. Nico glanced up from the espresso bar. I gave a tiny shake of my head. Let her come. She hovered near the tea counter, then walked over, clutching a manila folder like it might save her. I need a minute, she said. I gestured to the corner table, the quiet one near the potted sage. She sat, I followed. She slid the folder toward me. What's this? I asked, not touching it. An offer, she said. For partnership. Legitimate. 50-50. We'd sign together. Share creative control. You'd stay the face of it, but I'd help grow the brand. I stared at her. You think I want a business partner who once tried to trademark me out of my own life? Her eyes dropped to the table. I panicked. When the lease fell through, I thought, if I didn't launch something fast, I'd be done. My backers pulled out. Eli blamed me. I let the silence stretch. She looked up. You built something people care about. I thought maybe I could be useful again. There it was. Not greed, not entitlement, fear. The influencer dream was cracking. Her curated life, that shiny brand of breathy wellness and constant reinvention, it was running dry. And under all that, she was still the little girl who once cried when her classmates didn't come to her science fair project. The one I held on the bathroom floor after her first panic attack. The girl who never felt quite enough. I softened, but not too much. Brooke, I said gently, if you want to be useful, show up. Do the work. Don't ask for half the mountain just because you finally started climbing. She blinked. I'm not shutting the door, I continued. But I'm not handing you a key either. Not until you prove you can build something that doesn't start with burning me down. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Then she stood, gathered the folder, and said, "I'll come back tomorrow, for my shift." And she did. The next morning, Brooke showed up in a simple tee and ponytail. No phone filming her arrival. No monologue about intention. She helped stock the tea shelf, listened while Harriet shared a story about her late husband and lemon pie, wiped the counter after a kid spilled almond milk across the register. And when a woman named Norma came in, flustered and red-eyed, Brooke did something that stopped me in my tracks. She made her tea. Carefully, kindly, no performance. Norma was one of our newer visitors, mid-60s, widow. Her son had recently gone no contact. Said she was too much, according to her. She'd arrived, clutching her coat like it was the only thing keeping her stitched together. "I don't want a circle," she'd told us before. "I don't need journaling. I just want to feel normal for an hour." So Brooke made her tea. Rooibos with oat milk and a whisper of clove. Then she sat beside her in silence. Not fixing, not coaching, just being. I watched them from across the room. Brooke didn't say a word until Norma finally sniffed and muttered, "He blocked me." After I sent him a picture of his dog, Brooke nodded slowly. "My mom once did that," she said. "Blocked me. I didn't call for months. Told myself it was her fault." Norma looked at her. "What changed?" Brooke smiled. A sad, honest smile. She stopped chasing. And then, eventually, I wondered why she ever had to. I stood frozen in the middle of the cafe, a tea canister still in my hands. That was not a line Brooke had rehearsed. That wasn't performance. That was reflection. Real and raw. It landed on me like a gentle weight. Maybe she was building something, maybe not with me, but finally within herself. That night, Nico and I sat in the office, tallying numbers and prepping the newsletter. "You think she means it?" he asked, sipping yerba mate from a chipped mug. "I think she's learning how to," I said. He nodded slowly. "I like her better when she's not trying to sell anything." "Me too," I said, "especially when she's not trying to sell me." We both laughed, a quiet kind of release. I didn't know if Brooke would stay. Didn't know if she'd relapse into that hunger for validation, or if Eli would drag her back into some new pyramid scheme wrapped in positive mindset packaging. But for now, she was present, and sometimes presence, not apology, is the real beginning. She came bearing an offer, but what she really brought was the first true moment of truth I'd seen in years. I found her in the freezer room on a Wednesday afternoon, crying beside the oat milk. It wasn't loud, just this low, shuddery breath, the kind you don't want anyone to hear but can't stop no matter how hard you try. I'd come in to grab more elderflower syrup and stopped cold when I saw her crouched near the bottom shelf, hands buried in her sleeves like she was trying to disappear. She didn't see me at first, and Lord help me, I nearly walked away. Because when your daughter, your grown daughter, crumbles like that, part of you wants to rush in. The other part remembers every bruise she left on your heart and thinks, let her sit with it. But I didn't do either. I just closed the door gently behind me and leaned against the rack of frozen soup jars. "You okay?" I asked, soft and plain. She didn't look up, just shook her head. I slid down the opposite wall, my knees protesting the whole way. "Want to talk about it?" "I can't fix anything," she said finally, voice thick and broken. "Eli's gone. Took his laptop, my credit card, and the lease to the co-working studio we were supposed to open." Ah, there it was. I didn't say I told you so. Didn't remind her that Eli had always been smoking a nice button-down. Instead, I waited. "He said I was the problem," she whispered. "Too emotional. Too impulsive. He said I ruined every chance he ever had." My jaw tightened. Not at her, but at him. That same kind of man who always blames the woman holding the umbrella when the storm hits. "He's wrong," I said. "But that doesn't mean you're blameless." She nodded, wiped her nose on her sleeve. "I know." Silence filled the little room, thick and humming with cold. I heard the compressor kick on. Somewhere, a tea kettle whistled from the cafe. Finally, she looked at me. "Why didn't you throw me out?" I blinked. "When?" "After the rehab center. The photos, the trademark stuff. I would have thrown me out." I met her eyes. "Because I already lost you once, and I wasn't ready to do it again." Her face crumpled. "But I'm not giving you my name." I added. Or my business. You want to rebuild? You build from scratch. And you build with both hands. She nodded, biting her lip to keep it from trembling. Also, I added gently, you should know the oat milk you're leaning on costs $9.75 a carton. Cry somewhere cheaper. She laughed, wet, choked, but real, wiped her eyes with the hem of her hoodie and muttered, God, I missed your sarcasm. I stood, knees crackling like popcorn, held out a hand. Come on, you've got a circle to prep for. That night she stayed late, helped mop the floor, bagged the compost, didn't ask for praise, didn't post a single photo, just worked. And the next week, she came in every day. Her clothes were plainer, her posture, humbler. She started journaling between shifts. She even apologized to Nico. Real apology, no script. Said she'd written him off as some coffee guy, and now realized he was the soul of the place. He shrugged. Happens to the best of us. But he smiled when she walked away. And one night, after our breathwork group finished, and the last chair was stacked, he turned to me and said, You think she's really changing? I wiped down the counter slowly. I think she's becoming. He nodded. Fair. We didn't talk about forgiveness much at Second Wind. It wasn't something we forced. Sometimes it came quietly, years after the wound. Sometimes it didn't come at all. And that was okay too. But this felt like a turning. The first real test came 2 weeks later. A young woman showed up at the cafe, glossy and nervous, holding a camera crew like a security blanket. She wanted to do a segment, Mother-Daughter Wellness Warriors, Healing the Divide. Said she'd followed Brooke online for years, loved the whole redemption aesthetic. Said it would do numbers. She wanted to film us. Together. Brooke didn't even look at me. She looked straight at the girl and said, This space isn't a storyline. It's a sanctuary. We don't film here. The girl blinked. But it's kind of a missed opportunity, don't you think? You two could. Brooke held up a hand. Calm. Firm. No. The camera guy sighed. The girl left. And Brooke? She went back to the sink and kept washing dishes. No drama. No tears. Just water running and plates clinking. I didn't say anything. I just handed her a towel. And in that moment, I saw her not as my prodigal daughter. Not as a branding threat, but as a woman. One who'd finally stopped spinning. She broke down beside the oat milk, but maybe that's what it took to thaw the part of her heart that had been frozen for years. It was a slow Monday when I found the envelope. No rush hour crowd, just the usual rhythm of soft jazz and clinking mugs. Nico was out back unloading turmeric root. Brooke was stocking the new elderberry tonic near the window. The tip jar sat where it always did, beside the register, half full with crumpled dollars and the occasional peppermint candy someone thought counted as currency. I was wiping the counter when I noticed it. A small cream envelope, tucked right behind the jar. No name on the front, just a single word written in blue pen. For her. I opened it. Inside was a check, $3,000, memo for everything I borrowed and never paid back. And a note, printed in the same tidy hand. You covered every meal I ever forgot to thank you for, every ride, every doctor bill, every sleepless night you earned nothing for. I know it's not enough. It never will be, but it's a start. B. I stood there, the edge of the paper soft between my fingers. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift. Not in her, but in me. Not forgiveness, but release. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just folded the check, slipped it into my pocket, and whispered a single word toward the kitchen. Noted. Later that day, I watched Brooke guide a woman through our new mindful aging workshop. Her voice was calm. Her hands didn't flutter like they used to. She didn't sell anything, just listened. After the group ended, she stayed back to sweep. She still didn't know I'd found the envelope. She didn't bring it up. That meant more to me than the check ever could. The next few weeks came with the kind of quiet bloom that catches you by surprise, like the smell of lilac in late March, like old pain learning to sit beside you without pressing so hard into the ribs. Brooke started bringing small things to the cafe, handmade coasters from a woman's shelter she volunteered at, thrifted teapots for our corner shelf, a worn copy of The Gift of Years by Joan Chittister, marked with sticky notes and underlines. She never made a show of it, just left them there. Quiet offerings. One morning, I caught her wiping down the table we'd used for her vision board workshop all those months ago. The table she'd once arranged with crystals and ring lights and empty claims. Now it held compostable menus and tea samples for low-income seniors. She glanced up at me. You know, I don't think I ever understood what wellness meant until I ran out of it. I sat down across from her. And now? She exhaled, a slow breath that had nothing to do with branding. It's not green juice and mantras. It's being able to sleep at night. It's knowing you made someone feel seen. I nodded. That'll sell fewer face masks, I said. She grinned. Maybe, but it's worth more. Then, one Saturday morning, Nico handed me a flyer someone had taped to our door. It was an ad for Luna Breath, Brooke's old backup brand. Except it wasn't Brooke's anymore, it was Eli's. He'd rebranded it, launched a podcast, and used archived videos of Brooke's old affirmations as filler content. He hadn't even cropped her out. The caption read, "Breathe bold. New episodes weekly." Brooke saw it an hour later. She didn't rage. She didn't cry. She tore the flyer down, folded it in half, and dropped it into the recycling bin. "I hope he finds what he's looking for," she said. That was it. And in that moment, I realized Brooke had done something I never thought she could. She'd stopped performing long enough to heal. Not perfect, not cured, but healing. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. That evening, I walked into the back room and opened our old lockbox, pulled out a file labeled Succession. It wasn't a plan to retire. Not yet. But something inside me knew it was time to think ahead. Nico had proven himself 10 times over. Steady, thoughtful, wicked smart with money. He'd take second-win places I hadn't even imagined. But Brooke? She'd earned something else. Not inheritance, not control, but trust. I added her name to a new page. Outreach director. Pending board approval. It was a step, not a gift, not a guilt offering, a vote of confidence. She'd build the future herself, or she wouldn't. Either way, this time, she'd earned the chance. She didn't ask for a do-over. She didn't cry at the register. She simply paid what she owed and kept showing up. That's what growth looks like. It was a slow afternoon, the kind where sunlight drapes over the tables like a warm quilt, and the cafe hums with quiet stories. Harriet was knitting. Dottie was telling a tale she'd told before, but with new flair. Brooke was organizing flyers for an upcoming workshop on financial courage of all things, her idea. That's when she walked in, mid-50s, sharp blazer, smart eyes, carried herself like someone who'd never once lost control of a meeting. "I'm looking for the owner," she said. Nico glanced up. "You're looking at her." He nodded toward me. She smiled. Not surprised. Her name was Valerie. She worked for the Colorado Courier lifestyle section. She said she'd gotten wind of Second Wind after hearing about our loyalty circle for elder caregivers. "I was expecting something more rustic," she admitted, eyes scanning the neat shelves and cozy corners. "But this is refined, purposeful." "Well," I said, "you build differently when you've been broken." She nodded slowly, like she knew exactly what that meant. We sat down with tea, hibiscus for her, peppermint for me, and she asked about the business, but not the usual questions. Not branding, or revenue, or the influencer nonsense people love to chase. She asked about grief, about starting again when the world tells you your best years are behind you. She asked why we didn't have any mirrors in the cafe. I told her the truth. Because too many women stop seeing themselves, and I want them to look outward first. At community, at possibility. Her eyes softened. When she asked for a quote to close her piece, I gave her one I hadn't planned on saying. "Everyone talks about finding yourself," I said. "But sometimes the real victory is letting go of the person you had to be just to survive." The article ran that Sunday. Front of the lifestyle section. Big photo of the cafe. Sun pouring in through the windows. A circle of women laughing. Mugs in hand. Nico was in the background holding a tray. Dottie looked like she was mid-speech, hands flailing. I was at the counter, tying a bundle of dried lemon balm. They titled it, "Second Wind, a place where age isn't an apology." It was honest, and it was kind. And in the third paragraph, they mentioned Brooke. Not by name, but clear enough. The founder's daughter, now a core team member, once walked away. Now, she walks beside. Brooke read the piece in silence. We were the only two in the cafe when the paper arrived. She scanned it once, set it down, and stared out the window. "I didn't deserve to be in that article," she said. "No," I said softly. "You earned it." She looked at me, searching. "Do you mean that?" I nodded. "I wouldn't have let them print it otherwise." She didn't cry. She didn't fall apart. She just reached for the paper again and folded it neatly. Once, twice, then slipped it into her bag like a seed she'd carry with her. The article brought in more women. A woman named Rita, who used to be a nurse in a rehab center. Turned out, she was the same Rita who helped me the day Brooke left me at Pinebrook. She walked in that Tuesday with a sunflower pin on her coat and said, "I knew it was you. I just wasn't sure if I was dreaming." I hugged her so tight, we nearly tipped over a display of turmeric jars. She stayed for 3 hours, cried twice, and signed up to teach a breath class once a month. Brooke poured her tea without flinching. Afterward, she found me by the stockroom and said, "That's her, isn't it, from before?" I nodded. "She remembered you." Brooke swallowed. "I don't deserve kindness from people like her." I tilted my head. "Don't chase deserving. Just live in the doing." She gave a shaky smile and got back to work. That night, we stayed late. Brooke, Nico, and I. Inventory, reordering, cleaning. Somewhere between counting mugs and updating the talkboard menu. Nico said, "You ever think about franchising?" I laughed. "You trying to build a second wind empire?" He shrugged. "Feels like there's 100 towns that need one." Brooke didn't jump in. Didn't pitch a brand kit or a logo refresh. She just looked at me and said, "I wouldn't lead it. Not yet. But I'd follow the women who could." That's when I knew. This wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't even about me, it was about the movement. Second Wind had started with revenge. But now, it had become resurrection. The reporter came for a story, but what she found was a revolution. One that starts not with a battle cry, but with the quiet act of staying. The sign-up sheet filled quicker than we expected. Brooke's idea, a first-step circle for women re-entering life after divorce, caregiving, or illness, had drawn more interest than any workshop we'd ever offered. It was simple. No speeches, no experts, just a circle of chairs, tea in hand, and space for women to say what they'd kept buried for too long. But when the day came, Brooke was a wreck. She paced the kitchen before opening, stirred the honey jar 5 times, changed her sweater twice. "You don't have to do this," I said. She paused. "But I do." That's when I saw it. The flicker of the girl she used to be. Not the influencer, not the schemer. The girl who used to knock on my bedroom door after a bad dream, whispering, "Can I just sleep in your room tonight?" Now she was stepping into something far scarier than the dark. Honesty. At 6 p.m., the women arrived. 12 of them. Some regulars, some new. One wore a neck brace. One held a photo of a child she'd lost. All of them carried something that didn't fit neatly on their backs. Brooke greeted each one. She didn't overdo it. No soft filter voice. No branded phrases. Just a hand on the arm. A nod. A real hello. Then she sat, right there among them. No clipboard. No stage. Just a folding chair and her breath. I didn't sit in. I stayed in the back, making tea, wiping down counters that didn't need wiping. I told myself I was giving her space. Truth was, I didn't want to watch her fall. But she didn't. She rose. I caught fragments through the doorway. I used to think power meant being the loudest person in the room. But lately, it feels more like being the one who listens when no one else does. A pause. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'm proud I didn't stay that person. And later, I burned bridges. I know that. But I also learned how to build better ones, with stronger wood and wider planks. Voices responded. Some nodded. One woman cried. Another reached across the circle and held her hand. Brooke didn't flinch. At 7:45, the group ended. Chairs were tucked in slowly, like no one wanted to leave. I stayed behind the counter, watched her walk each woman out, one by one, listened as she said, "Come back any time." Then, when the door finally shut, she leaned against it, exhaled hard. "You did good," I said. She looked up, mascara smudged, eyes wet. "I didn't think I could." "Well," I said, pouring tea into 2 mugs, You were wrong about a lot of things once. She smiled, took the mug. Think I'm finally learning how to be wrong with grace. We sat in silence for a moment. The kind of silence that doesn't itch. The kind that knows when something has turned. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the new roll packet. Outreach Director, I said, sliding it across the table. Real title, real work, pay included. You in? She didn't touch it right away. Just stared at it. Lips parted, like she was afraid to breathe. Then she nodded. Yes. Later that night, I stayed behind after she left. Just me and the soft tick of the wall clock. I walked the perimeter of the cafe, ran a hand along the shelves, touched the bundle of herbs above the doorway, listened to the silence and thought, she did it. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly, she'd started again. And this time, she wasn't selling the journey, she was living it. I looked at the wall calendar, a few open weekends ahead, and an idea, soft but insistent, started forming. Second wind had grown, so maybe it was time to open a second door. That weekend, I drove 2 hours north to a town called Windmere. Quiet, close-knit, still reeling from the closure of their only senior center. I parked across from a little storefront, with ivy crawling up one side and a for-lease sign in the window. It was perfect. 2 weeks later, we signed the papers. Not a franchise. A sister site. And Brooke? She didn't ask to run it. She asked if she could help train the first set of volunteers. At the launch meeting, she stood in front of a new circle of women. I used to think my value was in how well I could perform peace, she said. Now, I think it's in how bravely I can offer it. I watched her from the back, arms crossed, heart full. Nico leaned over and whispered, You gonna tell her? Not yet, I said. She's still writing her beginning. Because this wasn't Brooke's redemption story anymore. It was her origin story. She didn't just lead her first circle. She completed the loop between who she was and who she's becoming. And she did it with open hands. We stood there for a while, Brooke and I, letting the silence wrap around us. The wind stirred the lavender by the patio stairs, and for a moment, we weren't mother and daughter, business owner and assistant, betrayed and betrayer. We were just two women who'd fallen apart, and decided, in their own stubborn ways, to try again. You ever think about what's next? She asked quietly. I looked out over the garden beds we'd planted with the circle leads last month. Lemon balm. Thyme. Seeds sown by hands that had trembled but never stopped moving. I do, I said, but it's not just my future anymore. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't need to. Because Brooke, my daughter, finally understood that legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. And this place, this community, these women, they weren't my second act anymore. They were ours. The moon hung low over Windmere as we walked back inside, side by side, the cafe still aglow with the warmth of something that had taken root far deeper than either of us ever intended. Something stubborn, something sacred, something real. In the end, I didn't get the daughter I thought I wanted. I got the woman I needed her to become. And that was worth everything.